Hey guys, welcome back to the What's Next podcast, coming to you from beautiful Monterey, California, right here on the beach. Excited to have this next guest in here. We've got a journalist in the house. How about that?
Something new.
Yeah, I'm sitting here with Matt Vasilogambros. That sounds Greek.
Yeah, it is Greek, yeah.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, my dad's an immigrant, came to this country in the 60s.
Really?
Yeah, and fled the military dictator there, and they wanted to find a better life and found it in America.
Wow, how about that?
Yeah, it's really nice. Yeah,
like one generation away. It's usually you hear 3 or 4, but this is like dad came over.
Exactly. So I grew up in a kind of a suburban household in the Chicago area, but it always had flares of Greek influence,
Sure.
right? So Thanksgiving had the turkey, but it also had the Greek spinach pie, the spanakopita, and all these other things.
Sure,
yeah. So it was. It was a unique way of growing up,
Sure.
and I really do love that. So
I think Chicago's got a large Greek population, doesn't it?
Big Greek town out there. Lots of Greek people, and so always around those folks. I like being around an immigrant community. It makes it a little more interesting. So, but yeah, my dad always wanted us to be as American as possible. I had a lot of cousins who would go to Greece every summer, but he was like, no, we're going to do road trips. And we're gonna try to see this country as much as possible. Yeah,
sure.
And so that was always really, I love that. I think he always appreciated that influence, and so I had my little American dream, back home.
Yeah, it's a Midwest upbringing, doesn't get much better than that.
No, it really doesn't. And so it's something I really appreciate, and something a lot of people really, I think, don't have or take for granted.
Sure.
And so, I loved that aspect of my life. I loved, my grandparents telling stories of the old country, and my dad, is kind of a personal hero of mine. He made it, and that's
awesome.
That's the whole thing. He worked his butt off to provide a good good life for his family, and I got to pursue my dreams and be a journalist. I really didn't have to work a day in my life.
That's
so
cool.
Yeah,
right on. Yeah, I had a gal in here yesterday that almost had the same story, but she came from Mexico, and I was telling her about the podcast I had a week before that about his grandparents came from Italy, and he makes wine, and he named the wine A Better Life.
Yeah,
because that's what his grandparents were trying to bring to their family. It was just this story you heard over and over again, coming to America from all points of the world.
Absolutely,
that's cool.
Yeah, and my grandparents have that typical immigrant story. They didn't speak much English at all. My grandfather clean dishes at a restaurant.
$14 in my pocket when I got
here. Seriously,
right?
It was very much like that. They came on a boat.
Awesome.
My grandmother sewed in a factory, and
really,
and my dad worked his way through college. It took him 5 years to get his degree because he was working at a grocery store, working full time, and so really hard worker.
Yeah.
He tried to instill that in me, and so I really do appreciate that story, and unfortunately, it didn't teach me much Greek. I think that's a typical story among some immigrants as well. They kind of want, the most American thing as possible. And so, unfortunately, when I do talk to other Greek people, they speak Greek to me, and I don't have an answer for them.
Right. I got the name. That's all I need.
Exactly. I always think I'm going to be like the prodigal son returning, and they're like, oh, you don't speak any Greek. So.
Yeah, nah. You probably understand more than you can speak it back to them.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. And I know the culture as well. And,
that's huge.
The weddings. And, for a little bit, I was even part of a Greek dancing troupe of sorts. Yeah, I wanted to be connected to it.
Right.
And luckily for me, I have some family back there, and so I keep in touch with some cousins. And it's a beautiful country.
Oh yeah, for sure. Have you ever been back to Greece?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been a couple times in my adulthood. One time I went as a reporter actually, and got to rub elbows with some Greek elites, some politicians and the sort. But also got to go to the village where my dad was born.
Oh, how cool!
And see his the house that he grew up in and everything, and so that was really special. And he got to tell me some stories. He said, from this kitchen, I remember distinctly his mother, my grandmother, listening to the radio and hearing JFK was assassinated, and her visceral reaction to that. So even those stories, are really special to me. It's that kind of influence that our country had, and kind of dictated where they wanted to go after that.
Right.
Yeah.
And here you were standing at that house.
I was standing at that house, which was really really special, really emotional.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Wow, how
and,
cool.
it was great to connect with my family, and we had, that typical big meal out on a porch, the mountain vista, having, Greek salad and wine and just reconnecting with the family out there. Right. So it's special to be able to have that connection with folks.
So your dad came over, so there must still be quite a bit of family over there.
Quite a bit of family.
Once you got there, it was a family reunion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. So very, very, very closely related to all those folks, and with Facebook and everything, Zoom, we're able to connect and keep in touch with those people. And so I've been able to host a couple cousins coming to America.
Really?
Yeah. I brought my cousin Apostolis to New York City, and I showed him Times Square and all the things. We went to the top of the Empire State Building and all of that. But the thing that he talked about the most was our trip to Shake Shack. So having a good cheeseburger was his favorite part of the trip.
That's funny.
So I think I wasted some time doing some of the touristy stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's. Can you imagine seeing New York?
Oh yeah.
Coming from, I had a friend that his dad owned New York Carpet World, and it was all over, Grand Rapids and Michigan and all over the place. And coming to find out, there wasn't any in New York. I was like, why would you name it New York Carpet World if there's any shops there? So when he immigrated and he came, the first thing he saw of America was New York, and he had never seen anything like that before.
Yeah.
He thought it was the greatest thing. So when he started a company, it was like, what's the greatest thing?
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. Looking at it from an immigrant's kind of point of view.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think he had a blast. And it was special to show him around. And, he's done the same for me when we went to Athens.
Really?
Yeah, he showed me around. Took me to all his joints.
Cool.
Yeah, so that was really cool, and it's great to I have the last name, and I've always self-identified as a Greek American, but it was cool to actually go to Greece and see the Acropolis and see all of that. So that was really important to me.
How cool!
Yeah.
Right. That's neat. I keep saying how cool, but I just can't imagine going there.
Yeah, it's really special, and there's so much influence in our daily life. Democracy and architecture and everything else in between. It's just it's a special background. I'm proud of it.
There was a funny line in My Big Fat Greek Wedding where he's like, "My people were talking philosophy when your people were still hanging from trees."
And that's true.
That's so funny. Right?
And my mom's not Greek, so my dad throws that in her face all the time. And so there's a lot of lines in that are too true. And especially, I've had stints of being a vegetarian, and when my grandparents were alive, they did not appreciate it, because you have to eat meat.
Yeah, is that part of it, right?
Oh yeah, well,
lamb or
exactly. And so it was really some funny interactions with them. Right. Yeah.
What kind of journalism were you doing over there?
Greece has gone through a bit of a financial crisis, and so there's an organization called the American Hellenic Business Association or some sort, and they were trying to get journalists to come over there and say, Greece is on the right path financially. So I was there with a bunch of journalists and we did tours to factories, to business establishments. We sat with the prime minister, and we just tried to understand a little bit more about the Greek economy and see if they're recovering. And it's a slow road to recovery, but it was great to write some articles and meet business leaders and average Greeks. And it was around the same time that we had our financial crisis, and so I think there's a lot of hurt. And but it was interesting to go to a different country and see how they were dealing with it as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And really see it from the top.
Absolutely.
And you got to meet. Got to go around and meet the owners of the different factories and that kind of thing.
Absolutely, and everything from again from the top as the owners of the factories and the politicians, but also we went to homeless shelters and got to talk to folks who are having a hard time. So it was good to kind of run the gamut and see how a financial crisis can impact a lot of people. And that was a great part of my career. I've been a political journalist mostly. Lived in D.C. for 10 years. Covered the White House and Congress and foreign affairs, and but it was special to go abroad get out of the bubble that is DC, and meet folks in different countries and see what their lives are like. I love telling stories like that.
Right. So you went off to college from Chicago, or did you go to college right in Chicago? Or?
No, I went to college in Iowa.
Iowa, okay.
Yeah, I went to college at Drake University. It's in Des Moines. For a very nerdy reason, I wanted to experience the Iowa caucuses, the first presidential contest. And
everybody's got their thing.
Yeah, and that was my thing, and I was really into it. I wanted to see democracy firsthand, and a caucus, for folks who aren't familiar, it's not like you're putting a ballot in the ballot box. You're standing in a room, and they divide the room into sections. They say, okay, you support Hillary Clinton, you go in this corner, you're Obama this corner, Edwards this corner, and they do a hand count, and that's how they determine who their nominee is. And I think that's unique, and not a lot of people experience that. And so I wanted to experience that firsthand, and I interned for ABC News and George Stephanopoulos, another Greek. And
he saw your name. He's like, yeah, shoe in.
Exactly. And I had a great time, and it was good to go to school in a small state like Iowa.
Yeah.
It really felt, I don't have to tell you, it's great to be in the Midwest and experience that.
Did they have a fantastic journalist program? Or?
Yeah, they had a great journalism program and a really good politics program, and so I did both of those.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, I edited the student newspaper, met a lot of great people, and because Iowa is so kind of foundational in politics, I was able to meet a lot of great folks, and I always appreciated going to school not in D.C. or in New York, not in a big town, so that I could better understand how average folks live
and escape all the influence.
Absolutely,
yeah.
And there's so much of that, and so I know it sounds corny, but I always do hold the Midwest with me all the time, and I really appreciate the upbringing there.
Right, I've had people here tell me, God, I just love people from Michigan. It's like they can take a paperclip and make anything out of it. They're just so, same thing. Chicago is like that Midwestern mentality where you have to make it work.
Absolutely. And it's funny. I lived in, like I said, I lived in D.C. for 10 years, but in retrospect, all of my friends were from the Midwest, and two of my best friends are Michiganders, and so it's just kind of tells you gravitate toward these people who kind of they share your values, and they really opened up to you, and we had the shared trauma of our winters that we all share as Midwesterners,
Yeah.
So
values, right?
Exactly.
That's the truth. But you have to look out for your neighbors. When there's a blizzard coming, you want to check the neighbors, see if the old lady down the street has her prescriptions. Get on your snowmobile and run to the grocery store for her or something. There's just not that community out here because it doesn't need to be.
Yeah, that's true. So, yeah, and I did the shoveling of the neighbors.
Shoveled the snow.
Yeah, I mean, that was just how we grew up, and you knew your neighbors and everything, and it was always kind of saying hi to people while you're walking down the street. Just that generosity.
Yeah.
And I agree, and I wish there was a little bit more of that out here.
Sure. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, tell me, once you lost me a little bit. Once you got out of college, you did some interns for what? For ABC or?
Yes, I did a lot of
interns. Walk me through that.
Yeah, so I graduated college, and I just knew I wanted to move to DC. When I was younger, 8th grade or something like that, I saw All the President's Men, the movie about Watergate, and that was just something I wanted to do. I wanted to be that journalist. I wanted to challenge politicians, powers that be. I wanted to tell stories, and so I worked hard and took minimum wage, $7.25 an hour internships in DC just so I can get my foot in the door. And I worked for a publication called National Journal, and I worked for a magazine called The Atlantic. And I basically hustled.
And those are political magazines?
Those are political magazines.
I see. Okay.
And in each of those, I got to go run through the halls of Congress and chase politicians. And
what?
There's a fun story of it was my first day covering Capitol Hill, and I saw John McCain, and I ran up to him. I wanted to get a quote for something, and hope I can cuss. A minor swear, but I said, "Oh, Senator," and he turned around. And he says, "What do you want, you little shit?"
Really?
Yeah, and I was like, and I
not voting for you.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was like, and I stumbled, and another journalist asked a question, and that was my kind of,
right.
throw yourself in the deep end kind of situation.
Right.
So yeah, he was kind of a hard head. And,
sure.
But that was a cool experience, and so yeah, I got to do that, and
just enough to throw you off.
Exactly.
Is what he was doing. He was just dinking with you.
He really was.
Next time, you're not going to fall for that shit. You know, there's a little bit of a learning curve. He maybe did that on purpose.
I think he did. I think he saw I was nervous, and he really got me, and I appreciate that story.
Right.
Yeah. So did a
lot.
lot.
Made you a better man.
It did. You know, he kind of threw me off a little bit, but it was a cool story, and he was nice to me,
sure.
after that or whatever. Yeah, but
you little shit.
Exactly, and I'm 6'3", so it's not
not little.
Yeah, exactly.
Shit.
But my attitude was maybe so.
Right.
Yeah, so that was a great experience, and so I did a lot of that. Capitol Hill, the White House, reporting and the sort, and I did that for a while, and eventually I wanted to. Interview real people. Politicians. Those sorts of stories can be really high profile, and I got to go on cable news and NPR and all those other things. But I really wanted to tell other stories, and I got to sign on to this project where we wanted to show what the next steps were in the American economy. About new immigrants and the sort, and so I got to start traveling the country and interviewing average people and seeing that their lives were impacted by the economy. And I wrote some of the most impactful journalism that way. I really did love to meet people of different political parties or different races, and that felt most fulfilling. And I think that's why I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to tell stories.
That's really neat.
Yeah.
You get more fulfillment out of the working people.
Absolutely. I really did.
They got a better story to tell.
Yeah, and
They're
it's
not going to bullshit you as much.
No canned answers either.
Can't, right? Exactly,
yeah.
Right.
And a lot of them reminded me of my grandparents or my dad.
Sure.
My mom's family. She came from working class roots in Southern Illinois. Old coal mining family. So I mean, all these folks that I met, I saw myself in them in some ways, and I know I come from a lot of privilege and education, but that was really special to tell their stories, and because I feel like some folks just their stories are overtold, or they have too much influence, and
right.
We can talk about the political elite or the economic elite, but I think the other stories are more interesting and more special, and so I really did enjoy doing that for quite a while.
Yeah, that's a neat thing.
Yeah.
My grandma came out of the hills. She didn't even, where was she from? Missouri, I believe it was. And she said she didn't even have shoes until she was like 14. And she worked her way up to being one of the top secretaries at Eagle Lion Studios in Hollywood. And it's like there's a huge gap there that I wasn't old enough to know to ask the questions that how did you get from here to there? Yeah. There's so many amazing stories out there that if you don't ask, they'll be lost.
Yeah. I totally agree with you.
That's so neat that you got a chance to get out there and talk to the I don't want to say the normal people, but yeah, blue collar.
Your average Joe or Joanne,
Sure.
And I think that's an important story to tell. And you're talking about your grandma, and I think about my grandpa and they were all working class people as well, and survived the Depression, and I grew up hearing my grandpa's stories about the Depression. He was a big storyteller, and a
Greek storyteller. I can't imagine.
Exactly. And I was always gravitated toward that.
Right.
And there's lots of really interesting stories to tell, and I think that's why that aspect of my job was interesting, because there's hundreds of journalists who cover the White House or Congress, but a lot of them tell the same story, and not a lot of people are out there on the ground talking to average people. And so I wanted to, I went to from everywhere from Atlanta to Nashville to Seattle, just interviewing people about their new startup or their new their small business that just got a loan, or a new community arts center. Just great stories that uplift. And I think there's a lot of negativity today. For good reason. There's a lot of interesting, heavy issues going on, but I think telling stories about solutions or telling stories about people who really found a way to make it, I think that's special. And we should tell more of those stories.
Yeah. I had a guy in here not too long ago. Once you start, he was in charge of Meals on Wheels. And I thought, what a great person to have on the podcast. Well, as I got to talk to him, he before he retired, he owned a racing car company. And he did all the building of race cars. And before that, he was a pilot. It's like I wouldn't have known any of these things, Yeah. It's I'd love to just sit down and talk to somebody and where you been? How you doing, man? How'd you do through,
I think that's great. I love that your podcast does that. And I think today, I don't want to sound too much like a curmudgeon, like I'm 33. But I think we spend a lot of time on social media, and I think we yell at each other, and we're not really in each other's lives. And I think being able to actually spend an afternoon with someone over coffee or a meal or just talking with someone, I think that's important. And I think we lose a little bit of that humanity when we're all online. And I think that's an important aspect to meet people all over the country and all over the globe. And so I have a great job. I love it. I call up strangers and I ask them for help, and they agree.
Do or they don't.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
How cool is that? Oh man. So well, one thing we talked about, you did some crazy, like a hike down the Pacific. Tell me about this. What's it called? A Pacific Trail or something?
Yeah, it's the Pacific Crest Trail. Yeah. And so, I was doing, I had my career in D.C. But I just covered the 2016 election, and it was kind of a bruiser, as you remember. And
sure.
I was a little burnt out, that life of, early hours and writing late nights and, writing a bit, and it can be quite overwhelming. And I was talking to a coworker of mine, and he and I were always big hikers. We, like I said, we lived in D.C., and so that's really close to the Appalachian Trail, the trail that goes from Georgia to Maine. And, we had gone to Canada to get together to the Rockies and hike there. And so we were big, avid outdoorsmen. And one day he asked me if I wanted to do the Pacific Crest Trail, which goes from the Mexican border in California all the way up through Oregon and then Washington and ends in British Columbia. I said, why not? I was scared. I had to quit a job. I quit a magazine that I'd always wanted to write for. But I felt like, I was in my late 20s, and I felt like, if not now, when? And This is not like a bike ride. This is actually hoofing it, man. It is. It's 5 months.
That's months and 5 months.
Yeah, it's 2,650 miles long.
2,000. Wow.
Yeah, and so
that's a long car ride.
Yeah, it is. It is. So we spent a year planning it, and then in April of 2017 we flew to San Diego. We were supported by what they're called trail angels, just volunteers who help people out. So some people in San Diego let us sleep in their backyard.
So like if you live along that trail, you can sign up to be a trail angel.
Yeah, you don't even have to sign up. You just have to volunteer. And sometimes it would be that we would go into town, hitchhike into town, and someone would be in the grocery store, and obviously we had long beards and we're all dirty, and so we look like hikers. And they would just say, "Hey, do you guys need a place to stay tonight? You need wash your clothes. You want a meal?" And we would always say yes and thank you.
Right.
And hundreds of people
really
helped us. No questions asked.
I wouldn't even imagine that. I would think, just people aren't, but I guess if you're along that trail, that's just what happens.
I was always worried about, are people actually going to pick us up? We put our thumbs out, and I was worried that we weren't going to get picked up. But I don't think we ever waited longer than 10 minutes.
No kidding.
Yeah. And
Wow.
we always got picked up. And so we basically what you do is you hike for between 7 days and 10 days with all the food on your back. Fill up your water at springs and streams or rivers. And when you got through your section, then you'd put your thumb out, go into town, fill up again, and then go back out. And so we did that for 5 months. And
wow.
We did everything from the Mojave Desert to the High Sierra Mountains, snow-packed mountains.
Oh my God, I didn't even think about the desert.
Yeah.
I was thinking about you walking along the ridge of the mountains up there, but I didn't think about walking through the desert.
The desert was brutal. Yeah, we had to carry all of our water on our backs. So that was really tough. And sometimes we'd run out of water and we'd have to find some sort of cow pond and filter the water there, and it was terrible. But you gotta survive out there and
grow hair on your chest anyway.
Exactly.
Right, make a man out of you.
Exactly.
Woo,
I know. So yeah, that was great. And so then through the Sierras in Northern California, the lava plains of Oregon, and then the beautiful green peaks of Washington State. And really, it was a challenge, to be sure. We were emaciated. I lost 60 pounds, something like that. Just
you didn't have 60 to lose.
I didn't know, and I was. You could see my rib bones, and you could see my hip bones. I was so
sticking out.
I looked like I had survived a war, you know. And
but there's more colors of green up there than you can even imagine to try to explain to somebody, isn't there?
It's so beautiful up there, and I had a great time just being outside. And, we didn't sleep in our tents all the time. The weather was good.
Yeah, where'd you sleep?
Sometimes we would cowboy camp. We just sleep under the stars.
Really?
Yeah.
No kidding.
We would just maybe find a little clear patch and have our sleeping bag and just sleep under the stars. And we only had a couple close calls with bears.
Bears and coyotes
exactly,
and stuff like that.
Yeah. A couple, mice crawled over us at some point. A little intense. But I love that aspect. I love the wilderness part.
That's part of it.
But I also, like you mentioned earlier, the trail angels, the people who helped us out. I think about the guy who we got caught in a rainstorm and he pulled over to the side of the highway and he asked us if we were okay. And we just said we were cold. And he said, "Stay here. I'll be right back." And he came back 10 minutes later with In-N-Out burgers for us. And I just I actually cried.
Like what? Right.
Yeah, it was incredible. An In-N-Out burger
killer.
When you're just, completely burnt out. We also, I also met people who of political parties that I'm not my politics, but they were extremely nice to me. And, it's, again, like I said earlier, in a time of great, divide.
Especially just coming out of that.
Oh my gosh.
You were like raw.
Yeah, I was. And I met a lot of people who
from
were
the other side.
Just nice to me.
Yeah.
And they're human
for
beings.
For no other reason than you might be cold.
Yeah, exactly.
How cool.
And so that kind of taught me a lesson too. That's an important lesson to learn.
You learned a whole bunch of lessons at 29 or however you were traveling across the United States. Yeah.
I think everyone should have their big adventure.
So too.
Yeah. And I think it was good for me to open my eyes a little bit and meet people who, just we have different lives. Lives. I was just this DC kid, pretty, cocky DC kid, and they, were from these, rural areas, and it was humbling. I really like that.
Yeah, right. How cool is that? Oh man, I love that. So where did you end up? You went all the way up to British Columbia, you said.
Yeah, we went to British Columbia.
That must have been getting cold up there.
Actually, we were 1 day away from a blizzard.
Were you?
Yeah, that's why you kind of have to hustle up. Yeah. Because we finished in September.
There's a timeline you got to get. Yeah, I see. Right.
Yeah.
Maybe you should have started north and headed south.
Yeah, a lot of people do that too.
That's probably
yeah.
You don't have to rush against the winter.
Yeah, it's tough because you don't want to wait too long you don't want to start late in Southern California because then it'll get too hot in the desert.
Too hot, sure.
But then you don't want to get to the Sierras too quickly because there's too much snow. Unfortunately for us, it was a record snow year. Obviously, we don't have that right now in California. We're going through a drought, but we had to not only go through all that snow, but also we had to cross raging rivers that were flooded with ice melt. And like I said earlier, I'm a tall guy, and sometimes we'd have to wade through rivers at my chest.
No kidding.
And that's pretty scary stuff.
It's dangerous crap.
It really is, yeah. And we had ice axes with us to try to get through some of the mountain passes. It was intense, especially as a flatlander from Illinois. That's not something that I'm used to, that you're used to in Michigan, unless you're up in the Porcupine Mountains in UP. No. And but so that's that was definitely super challenging. So yeah, by the time that we got to Canada, it was getting cold, and we crossed right in time. And the next day, as we were on the Greyhound to Vancouver, so that we could fly back to the States, it was snowing.
Really?
And so just imagine being out, in our small gear, our lightweight gear in the snow. That would have been devastating. And yeah.
You must have been like 10 feet tall that day, man.
Yeah, it really felt good.
You must have been so stoked.
Yeah.
That, what was behind you, what you'd accomplished, all the things. Yeah, now I'm heading home. It's like, kind of a hollow ending, but it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
You must have just been on top of the world.
It really felt like that. And in many ways we were at a high elevation.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But yeah, it felt like a culmination of a lot of hard work. And, we were told at the beginning of the hike, don't look at it as if you're hiking to Canada, because then it gets too overwhelming.
Sure.
It's 5 months away.
Mm-hmm.
So they would always say you're hiking to the next town.
Sure.
Well, so I had that mentality. And then so by the time that we were in northern Washington State in the Cascades, and by the time I got there, I really did have to take a step back and say, like, oh my God, we walked through the entire state of California. We walked through the entire state of Oregon. We're about to finish Washington, and I saw some statistic. I don't know how true it is, but they said that fewer people have finished the Pacific Crest Trail than have climbed Everest.
Really?
And yeah, I mean, it seemed kind of believable, just considering the market to climb Everest. And I remember all the people that I started with, and only a handful had finished. I think the finish rate's about 10%. Wow. So it's just I think that's a special. I mean, it's not a notch in my belt. It's not like it's not huge. Like a bragging thing. But yeah, but it's still like
that's huge.
Yeah, it's something that I really do treasure.
Yeah. You gained, at least 10 years in your mind.
Yeah. Gained 10 years in my mind. My eyesight got a little bit better. And
just because of what?
I wasn't staring at a screen. Yeah.
I wasn't staring at screens.
I wasn't staring at a screen. I was. It also changed my mentality around food. And obviously I know you care deeply about, physical health.
Sure.
But I kind of grew up with that very American attitude of like, okay, well, calories are to be counted, and food is almost kind of, there was almost a stigma behind it. You can't eat too much. And when I was out there, food became fuel, and I learned that I needed X amount to live, to sustain myself. And it wasn't like I was eating because I was bored. I was literally eating to survive. And that was the first time in my life I've ever had that mentality. Unfortunately, I've lost that again, because again, I live in comfortable California. And so it's just not something I think about, but I love that. I haven't had that experience since. I know athletes have that, have that attitude, but I was sustained.
Yeah.
By food.
It's funny. My mind takes me to, what was that Tom Hanks movie where he was lost on an island?
Castaway.
Castaway. And after he'd been rescued, he was sitting there on the plane with a lighter, just flick. Just how easy it is to make fire.
I feel that.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
You must have had a whole bunch of that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, it's just like I remember refrigerators. Like that was just like, oh my God.
A refrigerator.
Yeah, ice. I think that was something that was
water.
Yeah, exactly. Water that I didn't have to pump.
Right.
Or whatever. And so yeah, that was a really strange. Or sleeping on a bed.
Right. Just the basics of just laying on the ground, eh?
Yeah, it did change my. I'm gonna mess up the words. Circadian rhythm. It did change that for me. I now rise with the sun.
Do you?
I never did growing up. I was always kind of not a morning person, and now if there's a hint that it's gonna be sunrise soon, I wake up.
Really?
Yeah, and so that kind of changed in my body, and
that's a great thing.
It is, yeah. So I wake up early now. I have a job that's based in D.C. I work remotely, but since I work those East Coast hours, I'm up at 6 and it's not a terrible deal, and I kind of think of the trail, I wake up with the sun, and when we were out there, we woke up with the sun. We didn't set alarms, hiked all day, stopped hiking when it started getting dark, made camp, went to bed at 8:00.
That keeps you right on this circadian rhythm.
Exactly. And so I thought that was really healthy too.
Yeah. So and it just stuck with you.
It did. I think it just implanted, something deep within me. So that was one thing that I kept from that experience.
Well, that's interesting because, when you're outside. You got to be up when the sun comes up.
Yeah.
But now you're not.
No.
Now you can work remotely. You can get on your computer in your underwear whenever you want.
Exactly.
You have no reason to, but you're still stuck in that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think there's something healthy about that too.
Yeah, right.
So, I really do appreciate that. So I think there was a few things that I wished I had kind of stuck with the PCT. Just life becomes kind of comfortable as but I have dozens of stories. I've met a lot of great people and people I still keep in touch with. People that we went through something unique, and I still keep in touch with some of the trail angels that I met along the way.
Do you really?
Yeah, there's one woman. Who's a dear friend who accidentally was our trail angel 3 times. She was in her RV, and she would follow our Instagram, and she would just be like, "I'm in your town. Do you want me to go buy you guys some dinner?" I'd be like, "Yeah, yeah."
We hungry?
Yeah, and so she was she's very dear to me, and so she helped me out, and I still have friends on Facebook from those times. Yeah. Or if I go to Seattle, I meet up with my old crew. So that's kind of cool to have friends from all over the country and the world too. I met Canadians, Israelis. There's a lot of Israelis who, after their service in the military, they go do that. So they would tell us
the hike that you did. You mean?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because they get they're sitting on a lot of money after they do their service, and so they want to do some adventure, and so they would tell me these stories of their time in their version of Black Ops, some pretty deep, dark stories.
Sure.
And then they'd be like, okay, let's talk about the next day's hike. And so it was
wait a minute, I gotta.
Yeah, exactly.
Still real.
Yeah, I got a little whiplash there. So.
Right. Just every day talk to them.
Exactly. Yeah. So I really like that. I met a lot of Germans out there.
Yeah.
It's still a place of, you kind of, I had savings. So it's still a place of folks who kind of come from a little more comfortable backgrounds. And so I think it could use more diversity. The women that I hiked with, they told me that they wouldn't have done it alone, because they didn't really feel safe out there. And so I think there's a lot of improvement that needs to be done in the trail community. But, we built ourselves a family out there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh, neat. You gonna do any more? Or are you gonna do?
I don't know.
The Smoky Mountain. What's it called?
The Appalachian Trail.
Appalachian Trail.
Yeah, there's 3 major trails in the United States.
Oh, is there a third one?
Yeah, they call it the Triple Crown if you get all 3. So if you do the Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, and the Continental Divide Trail, and that goes from New Mexico up to Montana, and it ends in Glacier National Park. That one's very remote and very tough. I don't know. I spent a good deal of money. I've gotten my savings back up, but I think that's maybe a later in life decision.
How's your body doing? That was a long, arduous beat up on your body.
Yeah.
Anything?
Yeah, I got a foot. I got a foot injury out of it. Yeah, I got this thing called a Morton's neuroma. It's a pinched nerve in my foot.
Yeah.
I had some deep bruising that didn't heal for 2 years on my lower back because of where the pack laid on my back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I had some pretty deep bruising that didn't go away. I was pretty emaciated, like I said. I've gained the weight back and some, but I think there was definitely a bit of a toll on my body, and it took me a few months to get back to normal.
Yeah.
My parents were pretty concerned, I think, when they saw me.
There we go.
Yeah, and it was like I couldn't eat enough food. It wasn't like I was dieting or skimping on my food. I knew people who would smoke pot just to get the desire to eat more food. And so it was just, you're exercising for 12 hours a day. You're going up these mountains, hiking. We were hiking 3 miles an hour, so it wasn't like we were going slow. So we were really cruising, and, it was just weight was falling off of us. When we were up in the mountains in the Sierras, you're at higher elevation, and we were losing a pound a day. It was just falling off, and we couldn't keep it on.
And you got no fat at that point, so you're just burning muscle off.
Yeah. And I mean, things like my arms, like my forearms, were getting kind of bony.
Really?
It was strange, to see parts of my body where I didn't think that there was fat. And it probably wasn't fat. It was probably muscle was deteriorating at that point.
Right.
Yeah. So, that was definitely a toll. I think if I did it differently, I would do more protein. I don't think I was getting enough protein. But I think there was, I probably could have consulted with a dietitian before I went out there, because I don't think I was eating entirely the right things. It was a lot of protein bars. But later on in the hike, I substituted some of the dinners for like lentils, something a little more high protein, because I just wasn't getting enough.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember something that I saw. I don't know if it was a Joe Rogan thing or if it was a hunting thing or whatever it was, but there was a company out there that would basically take your blood sample and they would make, I don't know if it was protein bars basically to fit your needs.
Yeah.
And they would mix it up to match you. It's like, that's kind of what you needed almost.
I could have used that
entirely. For that long of
a,
it's one thing for, be out for a month, but you're really kind of pushing your health.
Yeah, we were. Yeah. And I was eating every hour too.
Were you?
It wasn't like I was, like I said, it wasn't like I was skimping. And the issue was, it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? So we had to carry all that food. So it's like all that
That's
stuff that I
too.
need. Yeah, exactly. All the stuff that I needed to sustain myself. It was also added weight. So it was kind of balancing itself out.
Did you do any foraging?
Yeah, we did.
Did you really?
For berries, a lot of berries.
Oh, no
kidding. In Northern California, we were near this very small town called Syed Valley. It's an interesting part of California. They call themselves the state of Jefferson up there. They are kind of separatists.
It's separatists. That's a word I haven't heard.
Yeah, I know. But I was foraging for raspberries in a bush, and I heard a rustle at the other end of the bush, and I was kind of confused. And then I continued to eat the raspberries, and then another rustle, and a black bear ran out, and he ran up the hill. I was like, I was sharing a bush with a black bear.
Standing right there.
Exactly.
Didn't even know it.
Yeah. And then when we were in Washington State, I always knew our elevation when I started seeing huckleberries pop up along the trail. And so we would, I always knew, we're at 8,000 feet. I can start, here's the berries. And we would gather, hatfuls. And
wow.
Sometimes we would just bring them into town, and whatever our trail angel was, we would make a huckleberry pie for them, based off the, the huckleberries we foraged out in the wood.
What a treat for them too.
Exactly. Yeah. So we did a little bit of foraging. I got really good at the stars and telling planets, and it kind of felt like the old days, and I felt like I was like an ancient, just always on my feet, foraging a little bit. Looking at the stars, waking up with the sun. I've done the Chicago to Mackinac sailboat race many, many times, and there's, I try to explain to people as you're sailing out of Chicago, as you sail away from that light pollution, and you get out into the middle of Lake Michigan and look up, and it's something that I don't think people have really seen anything like that before. And I'm sure you did up there on the north side, up in the mountains. Yeah.
Where you can't even fathom how many stars you're looking at. It's almost a paste of white,
It really is, yeah.
In the the Milky Way, and it's so clear from with zero light pollution.
Yeah.
You probably saw that. You're probably sleeping under that every night.
Absolutely. I mean,
Wow.
I don't have to tell you, growing up in Chicago, I didn't get a lot of stars growing up.
There's too much light.
Exactly. And I remember the first time I saw the Milky Way. It wasn't on the trail. I think I was on vacation in the Boundary Waters up in Minnesota. on a canoe trip, and I thought it was clouds in the sky.
Right.
It was the Milky Way.
It's so bright.
I know, it's so bright, and that was really special. And so we saw some really good stars. I gotta be honest with you. A lot of the times I fell asleep before the stars came out. We were so tired.
Oh man, if you're humping 3 miles an hour,
and we were
for 12 hours a day.
Yeah, sometimes we did 34 miles in one day. At certain parts, our average was 30 miles a day. When we were up in the mountains in the Sierras, we could only do about 15 miles.
Not so much, but
no, because we were at 12,000 feet or more. We climbed Mount Whitney. The tallest.
Because you're going up, you're not going fast, or just because you don't have any oxygen?
We don't have any oxygen, and also, the incline was a little tough. And so I was in the best shape of my life, but I remember just being completely winded all the time. And
all the time.
Yeah. And for a while, I was kind of an ass. And I was a little cranky.
Sure.
And the Sierras end as you're kind of descending into Lake Tahoe Basin. And I remember descending into Lake Tahoe, and the elevation's going lower and lower, and I just felt my mood brightening up. And then I started having these ideas again, and I started thinking more clearly. And I was just like, "What's going on?" It's oxygen. That's what's going on.
That's right. That's funny.
Yeah.
Your whole mood changed.
It did. I was just I was in a better mood. Yeah, I was in a better. Yeah, I was a better. And my friend was like, "Yeah, you were a real dick for so long." And I'm just
gotta get you back to sea level,
exactly.
man.
I'm really sorry. Yeah, exactly. That's what he said. I was just such a jerk, and so, and anyone who knows me, I'm just not that kind of person,
sure.
And so it's just, I think it was just oxygen.
Just ornery for no reason.
Yeah, I was just so cranky. Yeah,
cranky.
Yeah, exactly. And we were obviously working hard, and sleeping in a snowbank. That's not very fun. You're cold and you're wet and everything, and I just. The feeling you can't get your fingertips warm enough. And
Californians will never know this.
Exactly. I was just so upset all the time. And I'm in paradise, it's just it's the most beautiful place in the world, right. But I'm just still I wish I had a burger right now.
You can always wish for something.
Exactly. Yeah. And we looked the part too. We were in some place in Oregon, some kind of lake resort town that we were walking through, and we had dropped off our gear, and we went inside to get some ice cream or something like that. And when we came back out, someone had left a $100 bill on our gear, and they said, "Looks like you guys need this." So
and you did,
and we did, yeah. So we were able to use that for more meals,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were saying that some of the guys had to drop out because they were running low on money, so you had a little bit of money saved.
Yeah,
you weren't broke or anything. Hoboing it up to.
No, I mean I was. By the time I finished, I had run through my savings.
Yeah,
but,
okay.
A lot. People quit for different reasons. Some people get injured. I knew a woman who she was walking over a log, and she thought the log was solid, and when she stepped on it, it gave way. It rotted, and she snapped her ankle. I knew people who had relationships back home, and the relationship wasn't working. Long distance, and they had to
think about that.
Yeah, and they had to go home. Some people ran out of money, and some people figured out it just wasn't for them. There were a lot of people at the beginning of the trail. People who really they liked the party. They like to. I don't knock that. I love a drink. Yeah, exactly. And I love a drink as well, but that's just they got burnt out, pretty quickly trying to do that thing. And so
you can't party and do that at the same time.
No. Way. Really, I mean, I didn't have coffee for 5 months.
You did not?
No.
Why?
Because we just didn't have it. We just didn't have it. It was just more stuff to carry.
Right.
So I didn't have coffee for 5 months, and we had some beer here or there, but my tolerance was so low. A beer could get me drunk out there, and so it was just it wasn't my it just wasn't what my body could handle.
Right.
Yeah.
Got to do this. I'll do that later.
Exactly.
One thing at a time.
Exactly. I wanted to, and when we got to Canada at that provincial park that we ended up in, they had a bar, and we were all gonna have a big party at the end and blast. And I think like all of us had like 2 or 3 beers, and we're like, all right, I want to go to bed now.
This big party that you've been looking forward to.
Yeah, was kind of a blowout. We just wanted to go to sleep.
Exactly. Should have known that.
Yeah, we just wanted a meal and just like go back home.
Right.
But
fun.
Yeah, it was great. And then all of our parents kind of helped out. My parents drove an RV from Chicago to Crater Lake in Oregon, and they were so excited. They got to be trail angels, and so they asked.
Right on.
Yeah, they were like,
cool.
"What do you guys want to drink?" And I'm like, "Just buy Budweiser Heavy and Coca-Cola and have a bunch of snacks." And that's exactly what
potato chips. That's all.
That's all anyone needed. We're not fancy people, and so they got to come out there and do a little hiking with us. And my buddy Alex, the guy I'd hiked the trail with, his parents came and gave us the same treatment in California as well. And so we were supported the whole way.
Cool. Right. He made it all the way with you.
Yeah, he did. Actually, he actually fell in love too.
Really?
Yeah. One of the women that we were hiking with, we met her early in the trail, and she just kind of stuck with us. She kind of liked us, and around Northern California, they started spending a little more time together than they were with the rest of the group, and they're still together.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Right. Well, they got a cool story to tell.
They do. Right? They do. 5 years on, I told them that I get the book rights on this one.
Right,
I get to write their story.
I get to write it. Oh man. So what are you doing now? What do you?
Yeah. So we're out in Monterey. So like I said, we lived in D.C. for 10 years. Or I lived in D.C. for 10 years. It was really my home there, and I met a woman, fell in love with her, Emily, and she saves oceans for a living. She works for nonprofits and tries to negotiate with other countries to save large swaths of oceans. And she was doing that work, and we had met each other at the same company. We both work for the Pew Charitable Trusts, which is a nonprofit in D.C. I'm a journalist, part of them, but she was part of the ocean program. At any rate, though, she wanted to get a graduate degree, and so we came out to Monterey so she could go to Middlebury Institute of International Studies. And so we spent 2 years here for her graduate degree, and she just graduated in May, and she got a job in La Jolla. So we're moving down to San Diego.
La Jolla's in San Diego.
Yeah, just north of San Diego. And so we found a nice place down there, and going to start our next adventures.
Right.
I think we wanted to spend a little more time in California. She got a really nice job. Like I said, she's going all over the world, from the Maldives to Fiji. In her previous job, she went to the Galapagos Islands in New Zealand. And so, I really admire her dedication to that, to saving the ocean. She is a master diver, a scuba diver, and she has 1,000 dives under her belt, and she had me get certified, so I'm a scuba diver now.
Right.
Which, again, being
not on her level, but I can go underwater.
No, and again, being from the Midwest, I never thought I would be a scuba diver, but so that's been an important part of our life together, and so it's been a nice little jaunt here in Monterey. I love Big Sur, the rocks and the sea lions and the sea otters. I think it was a special time. It's on to the next adventure.
Yeah, for sure. A few months back, I had a guy. He's an angel investor from Boston, and he only does green ocean technology. He'll only invest in green ocean technology. What a wide open field.
Absolutely.
Holy cow. There's so many different directions. We had conversations about if you had a seagoing ship that was run by electrical, kind of like a Tesla is, you could literally pull up to a city if the power went out, and you could light the city up. There's just different things, aside from how much you're going to save the ocean. And, and then there's trash collecting, and there's save the ocean this way, or, ocean fishing. I know his wife was an attorney that dealt with ocean things, like how far is your fishing rights from land. If it's 20 miles and the water raises 10 feet, then where exactly is your line? There's a lot of goofy little different things that,
That's Emily's world. Yeah, that's her whole world. She talks about the fishing rights and stuff. But it's interesting. You mentioned about the possibility. She often talks about the blue economy. What the ocean, what sort of new, great, more sustainable ways that we could, have a good economy, but one that takes into account the protection of the ocean. And I think it's to everyone's benefit. It's to the fishers' benefit, so that there's actually fish for them to catch in the years to come, and it's good for communities, for tourism. It's just, I think it's in everyone's interest not to pollute the ocean and to try to keep it going, because it's just integral into our ecosystem, our environment, and nature as well. The ocean's worth protecting, and you're a man who loves to spend time on the water and boats, and I think you appreciate that as well. And so obviously the ocean is so critical to life here in Monterey, and so it's been something that I hadn't thought about much growing up, but something I'm totally bought in on. Yeah, we all should do a better part. Use less plastic.
Use less plastic. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's we've overfished the heck out of the oceans, and I don't think we really had to. We've really destroyed a lot of stuff that we maybe didn't have to.
Exactly.
Now we're looking back going, whoops.
Yeah, exactly.
Now it's going to take people like your wife to fix all the things that we've done in the past, but that's a touchy situation.
It really is, yeah.
And that's something that I'm sure that, you're in contact with too. It's like we're polluting the oceans too fast. We're using fossil fuels. We have to stop doing that, but we can't.
I know. It's such a give and take. I know.
And
I don't have the solution, and
there is none, right?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Like European countries are saying, okay, well, we're just not going to use power anymore. We're just using too much power to do our farming. Well, then you just killed like 500,000 people in the other third world countries. It's like we have to slowly take this on. I know we've really screwed up the oceans and that, but let's not rush this too fast.
No. Yeah, I totally agree.
It's a slow transition. Yeah.
And so, I think she would want to snap her fingers and wish that everything would be good, but it's slow progress.
Right.
And she also has to be careful too, because she's an American, and we can't go around telling people in other countries what to do.
Right.
And so I think there's kind of a balance there that she deals with in her career. But I think if more people spend some time on the water like you do, or we just got back from Mexico, we did this like citizen science trip, and we were swimming with whale sharks, these 30-foot behemoths.
Oh, beautiful!
And documenting them for conservation, and just being in the water with them, being 6 feet away from them, I was just overwhelmed, and man, I got kind of emotional just being around them, and I was like, oh man, I want them to live. I want them to be able to continue on.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
It's amazing being out on the sailboat and the humpback comes right up to you.
There's nothing like it.
I was coming out of Moss Landing, and it was dark out, and I was a little too close to shore, and there was a whale that came between the shore and me, and almost it changed directions to come over to me to swim between my boat and the water. And it's like, what was that all about? Did she mean to do that? Was she smart enough to go, hey, dummy, you're going the wrong way?
Probably.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But she changed directions to come over to be on this side of me. Came right in front of me.
I think they're curious too.
Reached right in front of me. I was like, wow. Yep. Okay. I'm changing,
Exactly. Yeah.
That was amazing. It was really cool.
And that's a special experience. I'm sure you'll always remember that
always.
too.
Yeah. And I'll always wonder, was she looking out for me? She saw like a sand bar coming at me or something.
Exactly.
So you never know. Yeah, I love the ocean. I grew up on Lake Michigan, so this ocean thing is all new to me. Everything. It's like I'm afraid to go fishing. I don't know what the hell I'm going to bring up.
Exactly. Yeah.
It might be 6 feet long. I wouldn't know what to do with it.
It was funny. I think I told I brought my partner. I brought her to Chicago, just show the hometown, And I think it was surprising for her, being someone from Seattle, growing up in the Pacific Ocean, to see a Great Lake and not being able to see the other side of the lake. And I think that was so new and so interesting to her. And I was telling, but our experience growing up on Lake Michigan is just completely different than growing up in the ocean or near the ocean. And it's been great. I love this new experience. And I think that's kind of a general theme for me. I want the new experiences. I want to try to learn something new and talk to different people and try to have a different hobby, scuba dive or hike across the country. And I just think it's been, I don't know, I'm all for the adventure and for the new experience as well.
I remember in my 20s, maybe I was, young 30s, maybe your age. We ended up going up into Munising Bay, up in the upper peninsula of Michigan, and going scuba diving on some of these old wooden hull ships that are laying on the bottom, because it gets so cold up there they don't rot away. So you can actually go down and see a 3-masted wooden ship sitting on the bottom. They've cut the masthead off and turned it back into turned it into a steamship or a coal burning ship, probably to haul iron ore for them. But still, you can see the beauty of this massive wooden ship laying there. It's like, what? You see the 3 holes in the deck where the masts used to be. It's like trying to picture this monstrosity of beauty,
I love that.
That's cool.
One of my biggest regrets, my buddy, one of my best friends, Bill, he's from the Detroit area, from Port Huron, north of Detroit. And his dad was a captain on one of those freighters on the Great Lakes, an iron ore freighter. And he's retired now, Captain Joe. But I always wanted to go on a ship, and I think that would have been so good, so cool to because he does all the ports,
Sure.
To Detroit, up Lake Huron, and up to Superior. And I just think what a cool life that was for him. And but we did have a rule. I lived with Bill. He was my first roommate, and we just couldn't listen to "The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald," that old song, because it was too sensitive for him. The thought about his dad, even though it's a great song.
Sure. Gordon Lightfoot.
Gordon Lightfoot. I mean, it's a classic song. But I love the Great Lakes, and I think they're so special.
Yeah.
I think they're. I saw some bumper sticker that said. Salt-free and shark-free.
Right.
I appreciate that.
The unsalted coast.
The unsalted coast.
I've seen a couple of those, too.
I like that, too.
When I first moved to California, I had a guy arguing with me. Those are saltwater. I was like, no, they're not. I've been sailing. No, they are saltwater. It's like, well, I don't know how far above sea level we are. We have to go down the Niagara Falls. You ever heard of that?
Yeah, exactly.
And then it goes down all the way through New York and dumps into the ocean. We're not even close to sea level.
No, bit of a hike from sea.
From
right.
Saltwater. That's true.
Yeah, gotta teach the guy about glaciers.
yeah, exactly. Right. Just dragged all that in.
Exactly.
Man, what a great time I had today.
Oh, it was wonderful being here.
So happy you came in.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of late, and I know you're heading out tomorrow, and you're moving along. So I wanted to get you before you took off. So I'm so glad you
my
had
pleasure.
a chance to came in.
Oh, you're great to talk to. I appreciate it.
Awesome, thanks. Okay, well, have a great move. And if you're ever up in this area, man, I'd like to do a part 2.
You got it.
See how it's going.
Yeah, great talking to you.
Brother. All right.